remembers their middle school days with the happiness that we had in this day. But I think that is indicative of Hill Country Middle School. We moved here in 1997, and my son was in the 7th grade, which is probably one of the hardest grades to move into, and kind of a yucky time. And I remember walking into the school and thinking, oh, what a happy place. And I thought for a middle school, that is just so extraordinary. And it is extraordinary, and it was happy and is happy because of the people that are like the people on our panel today. They started from a great place, and the traditions and the trajectory has stayed. Thank you all for being here today. I think most everybody's been here before, except we have our two of our speakers' wives, Marianne Baker, who is here. She was on staff at Cedar Creek for 21 years. So it's certainly part of the fabric. And Barbara George, who is Billy's wife, and she's a Westlake High School grad. They went to the last 2 years of high school, but didn't date in high school. So I'm sure there's a story. But so glad to see everybody. Who here went to Hill Country as a student? Okay, so we've got a couple of students. Who had a child that went Hill Country? Okay, that's those of us who weren't born here but got here as fast as we could. Any those of you who are on staff at Hill Country? Who's on staff at Hill Country? Okay.
Almost. I have a granddaughter now.
And a granddaughter now. Who has a child now? A relative now at Hill Country. Okay, very, very good. Well, I'm not going to introduce our wonderful panelists, even though I do want to thank all of them. But between Rex's information and their biographical information that's part of their story, I'm not going to steal any of that thunder, but we're so glad you're all here. You have unique perspectives, and we are so glad that together, all of those will bring us the history of the first days at Hill Country Middle School. Take it away, Rex.
Thank you, Ellen. My name is Rex Hoover. I was in the first class of 7th grade at Hill Country in 1975. And I wanted to thank a few people first for helping get this panel of presenters together. First, I'd like to thank Ellen and Kristen from the library. And Ellen, thank you for doing this in a week that there's nothing else going on at all. So quick shameless plug real quick. Shauna Kelso, raise your hand. Our Eanes Alumni Association chair. And she has a big luncheon, Legends Luncheon, Wednesday at Austin Country Club, where we're going to be honoring several of our notable alumni. And we still have tickets available. So if you have any desire to go, please talk to Shauna. I'd like to also thank Laura Bell, my co-chair who helped put all this together. I'm sorry, Lisa. And then my wife, Kathy Hoover, who runs the chamber, and my son, Jack, who helped with the PowerPoint and thumb drive and everything that I'm terrible at. Trace Ellis on the end, former Hill Country student and now assistant principal. Trace and the current principal at Hill Country, Kimberly Durrell, allowed me to get a lot of this information from the back. It was really fascinating to go back and go all the way through the middle school. I've been a couple times, but not really looking where was this. And so thank you for that. And then Mr. Ramsey at the high school principal allowed me to steal that great aerial on the back from the commentary. So if you haven't seen that, I would say spend a little bit of time on that. Let me run through real quick who everybody is on this panel here, kind of what they're going to discuss, so you kind of have an idea of what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about my experiences in the first class and what that was all about. I'm also, but before that, I'm going to start out and give a real quick overview of the Eanes ISD timeline from 1872 and how Hill Country fits in, because it's pretty interesting how it fits in. Lisa is going to talk about her time coming up through Eanes when we were opening all the schools and jumping around, and then her experiences at Hill Country. Kathleen Sullivan was principal at Hill Country for 18 years, so she's got a lot to share with us. And then we have a tag team. Dale Baker, 47 years in the Eanes District. Thank you, Mr. Baker. And Billy George, who is now a teacher in the art department, was a student of Mr. Baker's in 1982 when y'all did the mural.
I think it's right.
Yeah, so they're going to talk about the famed Hill Country mural that the kids did with Mr. Baker that hung for 40 years. And it really represented the time and place of Eanes and Westlake back in those early 80s. And then, as we said, Trace Ellis will finish up, going to give us kind of a timeline of the Hill Country School and his time as a student, now coming back as a principal, and also an update of what the current status of the school, what's planned for the year. So with that said, I'm going to stand up here so I can read my own things. So this is a little bit about me. I went to, one of the things that's really interesting that I, when we were opening all these schools, I went to Eanes in 5th grade, the outdoor quads. Then I went to Westlake Junior High in portables. Then I went to Hill Country for 2 years for the chaos of open classrooms. And then finally into Westlake into a kind of a traditional setting. And 3 or 4 of us here all had that experience of moving around. Whereas Scott McCullough graduated from Westlake Junior High, which was at the high school. And you were there from 6th grade all the way through 12th.
They only had seven through.
Yeah, 7th, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
7th through 12th grade. But
That's
they had
right.
7th and 8th grade there.
And my brother, who's only 2 years older than me, he went 7th through 12th just at the high school, whereas I was bouncing, Tim Zigner and I, my classmate, 1981, we were bouncing all around. My first job was for the district back in the old summer program days. First, I still got the check, 85 cents an hour. Both my boys, Kyle in 18 and Jack in 20 are both K through 12 Westlake graduates. Kathy and I are very, very proud of. My wife, we used to work for EEF. Now she runs the Westlake Chamber. My mom, who's going to speak, I forgot to say, my mom is going to speak. She was on the first staff at Hill Country. So she's going to give us a little bit of perspective of those days. And then my dad, Shap Club president, and did a lot of things, but he probably most famous for creating the iconic Pride of the Hills bumper sticker. So that's a little bit about me. I'm sorry, that slide's not supposed to be in there. This thing's not working. Sorry. Okay. So, all right. I don't know how that got in.
Yeah.
Okay, so real quick, the Eanes timeline. Let me go over that for just a second here. It's really interesting because we went 97 years with one school. From 1872 to 1969. Then we opened 8 schools in 28 years. And then from about 97 till today, which again is another 28-year period, things have been pretty static. And now we're in a very different time where we're closing a school. So we've kind of had this whole arc, and it's interesting how Westlake or how Hill Country fits into that. So in 1872, Robert and Eliza Eanes donated or built a log cabin for the very first school, very primitive, sat on split log benches, and they used slate out of the creek and wrote with limestone. That was how they did it. 1872, very chaotic time in Texas after the Civil War. Comanches were still running around. And I find it really fascinating to kind of look at 50-year blocks since this is the 50-year anniversary. But 1872 was only 47 years after Stephen F. Austin brought the original 300 settlers to Texas. So we were very early in the scale of things. And also Bruton Springs School out on the very west edge, out toward Westridge, opened in 1879. And it was famously known as the Snuff Box School and Church because so many of the students and churchgoers spit tobacco out the open windows that it was still to this day known as the Snuff Box School. So we go from log cabin, now we go to the first frame schoolhouse in 1896. So, and now we end up on the land donated by Robert and Sophie Teague, which is actually the current location of Eanes Elementary. This slide actually includes this chapel. So this is the frame schoolhouse. And then this was added later in 1928. They just kind of put the two eras together. So that was not there in 1896. And that was Westlake Presbyterian, which was the chapel. And also the Teagues not only donated the land for Eanes, they also donated the land for Bruton School, Bruton Springs School, which jumped around from different places. And there's a Roberts Teague Cemetery out by Barton Creek West. And that's where they donated the land for Bruton Springs School. And after it moved, their real famous cedar chopper son Homer and his boys Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, Stony Teague, lived in that old schoolhouse. And their recollections and oral history are really a huge part of the Ken Roberts book about the cedar choppers. So now we jump to 1937. We add the Rock Schoolhouse. This is the current Eanes Elementary Music Building. A lot was going on in the 30s. BK's Road was paved, I believe, in 36. I believe 33 is when the first electricity got into Eanes, which is only 40 years before Gloria and I moved to Eanes in 1973. As the old timers say, Lyndon brought the lights because the Hill Country was very late to getting electricity. And one of the things that I love the most, as part of that expansion, the teachers petitioned the school board and said, we need to have outdoor showers for the cedar choppers because they live in tents and they smell kind of bad. And so the school board said, okay, we'll build the showers. You teachers have to bring the soap and the towels. And at first they had trouble getting these kids into the showers because they'd never been in a shower. They'd never lived indoors. Of course, once they got them in the warm water, they could never get them out. So, but that just wasn't that long ago. And obviously tough times between the world wars in the Depression. So that was a very busy time in Eanes, very chaotic. Now we jump to 1969 where Westlake Junior and High School were formed. And we talked a little bit about Scott and some of those that I actually went to 6th grade. So I'm a junior, Westlake Junior High. Didn't graduate though. So this shows, as far as I can tell, this is one of the first pictures of Westlake High School. 1969, they were at trailers at Eanes, and then the 70s was when they opened the building. First year, of course, was most notable for our very first play in Westlake history. We were playing the St. Stephen's JV because we weren't good enough to play their varsity. And the very first play, Gary Jackson ran the kickoff back for a touchdown for Westlake. So that was our big thing. Very tumultuous time that Westlake opened, 69, Summer of Love. Just a few of the things that happened 60 days before Westlake opened. The first moon landing, Woodstock, Manson murder, Stonewall riots, and Chappaquiddick. So a very turbulent time that opened. Oh, hold on. And I circled there, I just had to show that great muscle car. I love that photograph. And this is an old, I think it's a Nash, but I love that muscle car that makes the photograph. So 75, the main event, Hill Country Middle School opens. For the very first time, Westlake or Eanes has a full slate of schools, elementary, junior high, and well, I guess separate schools because they had the junior high at the high school. The first time they had 3 separate campuses for the different schools. And that sadly was the end of Westlake Junior High. This is what I always call the big bang in Westlake. When we moved here in 73, it was kind of quiet. Toward the end, it just exploded. They opened up 360. They opened up Pennybacker Bridge. All the big subdivisions along 360 opened. Prior to this, old man Robert was living in a dirt floor house and owned from BK's all the way to the lake because there was no way to access it. We opened four schools in 15 years, 5 in 21. So it ripped this tremendous growth during this period. And again, it was bicentennial, so a lot was going on in the country. We've made it to Mars for the first time. We launched the space shuttle. It was really the last of the Cold War Olympics. Son of Sam, Patty Hearst. So again, Westlake and Hill Country opened in two of our more kind of famous years. And this picture, as it says at the bottom, is in 1978, after all the landscaping is fully grown in, because there is no landscaping. Going through this exercise, this is the earliest picture that I can find of Hill Country Middle School. Scott sent me one of it under construction from his annual, but the actual building, Mr. Baker's first yearbook that he did in 1978. This is the first picture that I could find. So if anybody has any pictures, please let us know. I have reached out to the architects in Lubbock to see if they have any, archival pictures or whatever. But they're just not very many pictures that I can find of Hill Country. So we're a little short in that regard. This was also in the same yearbook of 1978. Again, you just see how kind of desolate that it is. So now we're at the 50th. You can see some changes here. At the campus, we've got a Las Vegas style sign. Of course, the signature air conditioner units are still very visible, so we don't want to cover those up. But I'm just amazed at all of this. You've got an awning now, you've got trees, you've got shade, you've actually got AstroTurf and benches. So the front of the school has really become much more user-friendly. And you can see the crepe myrtles out here. So they've done a lot to soften it up. A whole presentation would be all the expansions over time that the school has gone through. And I find it really interesting. 76 was the start of just the big bang in Westlake. And now we're in a tear down period. We are not building hardly any new houses. We are tearing them down instead, which is kind of a quick turnaround. Very hectic times in the district, post COVID, now we're closing school for the first time, had closed Spanish immersion. We've had longtime school board members step down, superintendent resigned. So a lot of things, we're running deficits and we're really facing declining enrollment for a lot of reasons. So a very, very different time as we turned 50 than when we were just going on a rocket ship in 1976. SpaceX is now another space milestone. And I think it's cool because it was the bicentennial, which was a big deal. And now it is the 250th anniversary. And there's a lot of words. And you have to be real careful when you pronounce some of those. So I'm not going to say any of them, but they have not seemingly come up with a real clean bicentennial like we had in 1976. So my experiences in 1975, I had several people reach out to me and give me kind of their experiences. Tana Handel and Mark McClanahan talked about the dances, the jukebox, which I had completely forgotten about. So that's why it's important to get other people's recollections. I don't remember the jukebox at all, but it was a big thing for them. The biggest thing for me was the California open classroom chaos, where somebody in California said the problem with education is walls. So we said, no more walls.
No more walls.
And so we had these 3 giant barn rooms with 2 real classrooms for the older teachers to actually teach in. And then they threw the poor younger teachers in the back, like 4, at least for us, it was 4 classes. Tim and I were 13. The moment we walked in there, we said, oh, we got this. Run this place. And we did. It was loud. You could see the poor teachers. It was a disaster. It was fun for us. And it was very difficult for them to maintain order. They had these little cubicles where if you got in trouble, you had to go and sign a contract and about what you had done and what you were not going to do in this little kind of cubicle. And I do want to say Scott Dolezal still in my class still holds the Hill Country record for the most contracts in 1 year.
Hey Rex.
Yes.
Those open rooms were like an experiment.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Failed experiment.
So us kids were basically an experiment.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot of our.
and I'm sure you educators and parents can understand this, but the 8th grade class, which was very, very, very well, their big deal was they would all at 11, 17 all start coughing. So you had 100 7th graders or 8th graders coughing at the same time. In our class, we would all drop books at the same time. So that was some of the fun of the open classrooms. We kind of matured out of that now, thankfully. And then outdated teaching styles. Jim McGill was his wife was, Karen was the nurse, their kids went to school with us. Jim was a very proud UT graduate, had a huge class ring that he would turn around and he would kind of sneak up behind you when you were leaning back or talking, which we were all the time. And he would really pop you on your head with that ring. And it hurt. I mean, it really kind of rang your bell. And that would happen all the time. That was what he was known for. And today he would, be under the jail. And then this wild looking Jeremiah Johnson character, Dennis McIntyre. I wish this was in color so you could see how red and yellow and just multicolored his beard and hair and everything were. He ran the shop classes, and I put kickball because every Friday we played kickball with him, and he just loved that. And we had a 7th grade project, and mine still sits in Gloria's house. I'm very proud that my cedar bench is still in use 50 years later. So we finished about in early May. And so Mr. McIntyre said, okay, we can start a new project, or if y'all want to, we can play kickball every single day till the end of school. So we played kickball for a month, every single day with Mr. McIntyre. And it was one of my best.
And the art department
Yes.
played too.
Yeah, absolutely. Dale in the art department was out there. So next is Soap Creek Middle School. Right up on the hill was Soap Creek Saloon, which was the honky tonk out of town, and that's kind of the edge of town getaway, and was very, very famous. Doug Somm, who has his own hill down at Barton Springs, he lived in a rock house up there. And John Spong, who went to Westlake and Hill Country, interviewed the owners, the Majeskis, and they always referred to Hill Country as Soap Creek Middle School. So I thought that was, had to put that in there. Personally, I will never forget being 13 years old, no, 12 years old in 7th grade, sitting at football practice in the afternoon. There's no dirt. It was mud when it rained, then it was dirt. You couldn't have water back then because it made you, weak, and all we did was tackle. So it wasn't very much fun in practice. And through the cedar trees going up, we could hear the beer trucks. We could see the caliche coming off the famed rutted road up there, and you could hear the beer bottles clinking. And you're 7th grade trying to imagine the debauchery and what those cold beers must taste like. I will never forget that. Now, Tom Walton, who was in Kelly Gruber's class and all of them that were in 8th grade, he swears that one day after football practice, a bunch of them snuck up to Soap Creek to see Willie Nelson play. So whether it's a true story or not, Tom, it's a great one. So that's and my mom was always a little bit upset because she said all of the hippie teachers walk across the practice fields every Friday and go up to Soap Creek and drink beer. So
Never got invited.
I had to make sure that was in the historical record. And then a very big thing for me personally was being involved in the first play in Westlake or in Hill Country football history kickoff against the Gonzales Apaches, who are a big opening day opponent. And then personally, I broke my arm twice, still a little bit of bent, in 9 weeks on school property. So and one of them was a really nasty double compound. I fell off these little partitions, and then once was in basketball. So that was kind of my big memories of the first year of Hill Country. So now we're going to go to my lovely mom, Gloria Hoover. This is the first year where she was the assistant librarian with Elaine Leggett. Gloria started out volunteering with Eads and Virginia Witten, substitute assistant librarian. Then she opened several of the schools as they became open. Then was a volunteer at Barton Creek with my kids. So she's really, over her time, has really touched all the schools, so many kids. So many people come up to me today and go, oh my gosh, your mom was my librarian in 3rd grade, which it is really neat. She's had 3 sons graduate, 79, Cody, me in 81, and my brother Matt in 85. Then 2 grandsons, Kyle and Jack, and then 3 other grandkids that went through Hill Country Middle School. And one, the oldest, Dylan, we were very proud. In 2010, he won the Colton Briggle Award, which is a very prestigious award at Hill Country that is given to one of the athletes that's a great athlete, but also a great person. So very, very proud that our nephew won that. Ellen let me know that I should have panned out just a little bit so I could have gotten one map Salazar on there. Both Jackson Coker, who was the boy who died, 2020 football captain with my son, he won the award, plus one of his brothers. So there's been a lot of really notable kids, but everybody that won this award is notable. It's a great, great award. So, all right, hold on just a second. So Mom, I'm gonna have my mom share just a few words about the first year staff. Anything you want to say?
I don't really like to speak. The one thing I remember, we had to deliver the newspaper for the library to my house because the wild dogs carried it off every day. That's one thing. Elaine and I had a great time setting up the library. I think we put furniture together, in fact. But those were fun times, and I did enjoy going on to many different things, but anything else? It was a great experience being part of opening that school.
And not only were the walls a problem for the classrooms, they decided that libraries would be a lot better open to the main hallway of the middle school. So you can imagine trying to keep a quiet library environment with all of that show going on. So now we're going to go to Lisa Bell, and I will, there she is.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, I was in the last class of Hill Country when everyone in Eames were together. Oh, okay, is that better? And so in 1987, Westridge opened. So before that, everyone in the district went to Hill Country. And so that's me in the 6th grade. And I brought like my little Dooney purse, Burke that Dooney and Burke purse that I had that I carried around in 1986.
Well, we'll make that.
And yeah, so I'm representing the 80s here, and like this is the sweater, the puffy. I don't know if y'all remember the puffy sweaters at all, but it was a really fun time. But so with my history is I grew up in Lost Creek, and we moved to Lost Creek in 1979, and I lived on the boulevard, and it was just a dirt road after that. And I attended Country Day Preschool, which is now the Armstrong Music School. And then I started kindergarten at Eames Elementary in 1980, and that was when kindergarten was half day. So I spent half of the day at Country Day, and then they had a little bus, and then they transport us up to Eames Elementary. And then I think after that, a group of parents said, we want kindergarten full day. So I don't even really remember that, but so I went to Eames for kindergarten and 1st grade, and then in 1982, Valley View was opened. And so that was right across from Lost Creek, and Valley View was originally designed as like a kinder through 2nd school. So that's why I think it's just a little bit smaller maybe than Forest Trail was. I don't know. But then, so I spent 2 years in Valley View, which I really loved, being a Cardinal there. And Betty Ann Courtney was the principal back then, and we all loved her. But then they were building Forest Trail right next door to it. And so that opened up in 1984. So then again, my grade, we moved again. And so I went to 4th grade and 5th grade at Forest Trail. And so what happened during those times is, I think just because of Lost Creek, for some reason, we got zoned to those schools. But then before the schools were open, there were other students from other neighborhoods that would go to those schools. So it seemed like, every 2 years, I would have a group of friends and classmates that I knew. And then all of a sudden, they were sort of gone, and there were newer kids that were there. And so I just sort of thought that was normal, although I feel like every couple of years, I just was, oh, okay, I'm making some friends, and And I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're sort of gone, but anyway, that was just what I knew. And then it was so exciting. So we went to Hill Country in 1986. And, I remember, jamming out to Def Leppard and, like Van Halen and just people like, singing those songs and having even music in the classroom sometimes. But it was before it was expanded. And so it was a much smaller school, I feel, at that time. Then I moved on to Westridge, which opened up in 1987, and I was there for 2 years. And I remember being on that bus for forever. So for the Lost Creek kids, oh my gosh, it was a perfect opportunity to get your homework done. But gosh, it was hot and noisy. It was probably like a 45-minute drive at least. And then finally we got to Westlake. And so all of our grade came back together at Westlake. And so it was really nice. But then during those times, I guess either there were just a couple grades either before or after us that were sort of in this complete transition mode. Oh, okay. Okay.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, that's fine. So then we finally graduated in 93, and I feel like my grade was also one of the last years before the population just really started to explode. My graduating class was around maybe 350 students. And then my brother was 2 years after, and it was definitely maybe 100 after that. And it was jumped up to 500 to where we are now. So, yeah. Okay, so I went through.
Lisa remembered everything.
Yes.
Everything.
I have to give credit to my mother, Nancy Nave, who literally everything that came home, she put in a box. And so during the COVID times, I thought that was my project. So I got all the boxes out of my mom's attic and I put them all in folders. And so I have a few back there, but she has everything. I mean, she has the handbooks. Back at Hill Country, like they gave out a handbook test. And I filled it out in cursive. I got a 95. I don't know. I was usually a pretty good student. I did not make a 100 on that. But so just what was going on in the 80s, we had 9 dances and there was one every month. And what they were is they were sponsored by different organizations such as, let's see, they had Cougar Club, they had cheerleaders, they had Spanish, and they were basically fundraisers for those dances. But I don't think they weren't all open, I think, to 6th graders. So, but it was a big deal. I don't know if y'all remember going to the dances and having the slow dances. So I think now I was also on Hill Country's PTO board just a couple of years ago when my daughter was there. And so there are some dances at the end. However, it's more just sort of like a crazy party. It's more just like they have lasers and like glow in the dark and the kids just run around crazy. Whereas back then it was sort of a big deal. You sort of wanted to be asked to dance. And so it's very different. And then let's see. Okay, so 8th grade went to Pedernales. And so that was their big 8th grade trip, which I believe is still going on. We had 8th grade wills that were printed out in the Cougar Chronicle. And so that was a little newsletter that we had. I don't know if it's still there. My mom had a Hill Country Honors student bumper sticker. And then there were a ton of just like paper awards. So I have just a ton of just handwritten and nicely foil, paper awards, which I really liked. Let's see, what else is there? Okay, so back then, I don't know if y'all remember, there was a sunken library where that main hall is, where now it's just, I think, classrooms. But I thought that was really cool. The cafeteria was open, and I have some pictures to come. I love seeing the mural every day. We had a salad bar back then. But the class, or I'm sorry, Hill Country had around 1,000 students, which I think is where it is right now. So it was still very crowded back then. Okay, but some of I have to represent the women here, and that is that, like, we would have our Dunienberg or Liz Claiborne bags, and we'd have all of our makeup in there, and we'd have butane lighters so that we could curl our bangs and everything. And so there was just a rush at lunch to go to the bathroom and just like freshen up all of your 80s frosted lipstick and, eyeshadow, because you had to look good. So back then we had backpacks and a purse, and our puffy shirts and our keds and all this stuff. So, and now when you see, kids, they're just wearing little athletic wear in their backpack, and just like, gosh, bring back a spree or something.
There's still a rush to the restroom.
There's still a rush, but okay, maybe I'm wrong. It just. Okay.
Different reasons, probably.
Gosh, it was so fun. And then the hairspray. Oh, I forgot about the hairspray. You brought the little mini, or sometimes you bring even the huge cans of hairspray to spray those bangs. And okay, let's see. I remember Hill Country had lockers back when I was there, and so that was I appreciated that. I loved our music performances. We had them up in the cafeteria. And so it was actually, but we didn't have maybe we had a stage. I can't remember. We
It's
didn't
over
have
on the other corner.
Yes, it was on the other corner. Okay. I loved the projectors that were in the room, that sound of the projectors. And then like when a teacher was wheeling in the TV and they were setting it all up, because you're like, great, I get to watch a video. So all that is gone. It's all new now, fancy. And I remember the film where they would put in, the project or the actual film. And so anyway, so I just also wanted to bring back some of the businesses that were in the Westwoods Shopping Center. So Mr. Gaddy's is now Raising Cane's. There's actually a letter back there where some of the students after a dance were, sort of going a little wild. And so a letter got sent home to the parents saying, please don't do that. Please don't ever kids do that. There's a Taco Bell, which is now the Whataburger. I don't know if y'all remember the timeout for burgers. Okay, that was a huge institution, and all of Greyhound's beautiful portraits were there. So that was an institution. Chez Fred, if y'all remember Chez Fred. Oh gosh, wasn't that so good with their strawberry butter croissants, and it was delicious. But now it's the Emily Swim School. We had the Blockbuster, which was at the end of the building. The Safeway where the St. Bernard is, the Preparatory Dance Theater, which is now Elisa's Dance. I remember going there. The Yummy Yogurt, I saw that in an ad, and I'm not exactly sure where that is. So if anyone can remind me, but I saw it as an advertisement. And then Lotus Hunan and Los Palomas are still in business. So anyway.
I think the Thundercloud's still there too. That was originally.
Oh yeah, that was gonna be my question. You're right. When was Thundercloud?
Early 80s.
Okay, so it was there as well. Okay, yes.
Still there.
Yes, and now much bigger. So these are some of my personal photos. So Miss Gale's science room is sort of in the back room where you walk down the main hall and you take a left and you do all that zigzagging back there. That was the science room. Miss Brewer's language arts room was in the old open building concept, but we had accordion. Yeah, they had put the accordion walls in by then. And then on the right is the original gym.
Where I broke my arm.
And
One
then
of the places.
the new gym had just opened up that year.
Wait a minute.
Then,
There we go.
okay, and so, yes, on the left, that is now, you're sort of looking back towards the front of the school, and on the right is where the cafeteria is, and it used to be open, so there were obviously lockers there. And then the sixth grade locker hallway is the hallway when you go down the main hallway and you take a right to the library. That's where all of the, I guess, sixth grade lockers were. And then there's the choir room, which is exactly the same. So it was just so fun, me personally going there and just, being there with my daughter and just going through all the halls and all the things that happen in middle school, especially as a girl. Oh my gosh. And just remembering like, oh, I talked about this with her there. And, just to know that those memories and so many more, students have just had all those, foundational memories, through those wonderful preteen years. So it was a great experience for me.
Thank you, Lisa. Those are fantastic. Now we're going to move to Kathleen Sullivan. I wanted to say real quick, I left out on the timeline, as I talked about where the junior high kids went. Once we got to the Eanes campus, by the early 40s, mid 40s, the junior high kids from Eanes were going to O. Henry. They were Mustangs, and then the high school kids were Austin High Maroons up until 69. That was kind of the rural school arrangement that Ellen has talked about so well. So that's where our junior high kids went up until 69. Also, I find it interesting about the size of the classrooms. I believe the first class at Westlake High School was about 72 kids. I graduated in 81 with 220, but I probably started Westlake with 150 to show you how big the explosion of kids was in the late 80s. We've been about 650 to 700 for quite a while in terms of the graduating classes of Westlake High School. But the last 2 or 3 years, our kindergarten classes have been under 350. So that's why we're closing schools. That's why we have this budget issue, and it is a very, very different time for a whole bunch of reasons. But I think it is interesting to see the arc of not only building schools, but also growing enrollment. Now we're in a very different time. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen Sullivan. Like I said, the 18-year principal of Hill Country Middle School.
Thank you. And I'm going to do a shout out. I see two of my former teachers. Y'all just wave. Cheryl Bell and Nancy Coy. Cheryl was a PE teacher. And actually, Cheryl, I'm going to share a couple of things that you were kind of innovative with, not even knowing that you were here. And then Nancy was an illustrious math teacher, but I loved having Miss Coy. And so as Rex said, I was the principal at Hill Country for 18 years. You can kind of see a little bit of my background, but I actually was fortunate enough to come to Eanes District by way of Westlake. I had interviewed for, some of you guys might remember, the 9th grade center, the big drama over 2 high schools and all of that. And then it was determined that they would build a 9th grade center at Westlake. Well, I had interviewed for that position and I didn't get it, which, I mean, I was pretty bold. I had only been an assistant principal for 1 year. So why I thought I would be, so fabulous after 1 year of experience as an administrator. But I think, gosh, it was like a week before school started and I got a call from the principal at that time. And he said, hey, would you like to be an assistant principal at Westlake? And I said, well, yes, I'd love to. Do you mean next year? And he said, no, I mean right now. And I had a job at a middle school in Austin. And I said, well, I'm not sure I can get released from my contract. Anyway, it worked out that I was able to come to Westlake. I had to stay at my current school for 2 weeks. And so I got to Westlake after school had started. And, I was behind the 8 ball. Everything had started. I didn't know people. People didn't know who I was. And I'll never forget, I was telling Ellen this. Ellen was one of the first people that I saw at the high school scurrying around. Well, I just assumed for the longest time that she was one of the employees. Come to find out, one of my fellow assistant principals was like, no, she doesn't work here. And I'm like, she doesn't? She was the PTO president at the time. So that just goes to show you how involved Ellen has always been. But then I was at Westlake for 5 years, and I was fortunate enough to step into the role of interim principal. The principal at the time left in July. And so I was the interim principal for a year while pregnant with an 18-month-old. Do not recommend. But then the following year is when all of the greatness really began, because I got to be the principal at Hill Country Middle School. And so when I ran into Lisa, she was sharing with me this celebration. And I thought, I don't even know where to begin. But at the heart of everything I thought about was the kids and how great, no matter if it was my first year there or my last year there, the kids were always great. My favorite thing about the end of the day is if I stood outside, either outside the office or just out in front of the building as kids went to their buses, and I said goodbye, kids would say, bye, thank you, as if I had invited them to a party. They always would say thank you. And I just remember that being the sweetest touch, that they genuinely did appreciate, even middle schoolers. that they genuinely did appreciate the school that we had. And so I just wanted to share some of my favorite memories. I think the thing that pops out in my mind is the staff was always very innovative. They were always trying to think of things that would be fresh and new and for the students. And it went beyond the classroom. We all know that academics were always incredible, and that was because the teachers were incredible and had high expectations, and the kids would meet them. But some of my favorite memories were, I think maybe my second year there, I had a parent at the time come to me. She was the Booster co-president and said, you know, we'd really like to bring something fun in for the kids. You know, they're still young, playful. You know, they feel the pressure of academics. You know, how would you feel about a carnival? And I was like, oh, I don't know. But I kind of laid out my criteria for her of, you know, it would have to be, you know, these are the things that would have to happen in terms of organization and so on and so forth. Anyway, we did the carnival at that year and it turned out great. And then it lasted, I don't remember how many years it lasted, but it lasted for a number of years. And the last couple of years, we had an incentive where 8th graders got to go out an hour before the other students, you know, kind of as like, you know, their special 8th grade privilege or what have you. Then another one, and Cheryl, hop in if you want to hop in on this one. The PE teachers decided that they were going to do a unit on ballroom dance. And of course, you could never tell kids you were doing ballroom dance. But they had this great idea that it would be a dance unit, and we would bring in the Arthur Murray Dance School, would come and teach the kids multiple different dances. And the culminating activity / project was a sock hop. And so the kids got decked in poodle skirts and white t-shirts and leather jackets. And it was a huge event in the gym, and it was all decorated. Parents, of course, went all out and helped with decorations. They had floats for the kids, Coke floats for the kids. There were dance contests. That was really, really fun. Both my kids actually participated in that. So as a parent, I thought that was fun too. Another great activity, and I think Cheryl helped with this too. One afternoon, well, not one afternoon, but the, I guess phenomenon, for lack of a better word, and parents dropping off fast food for their kids became a thing. I don't remember how many years it was, but you would literally walk in the front office, and there's a kind of a counter that goes around, and it would be literally covered in fast food. And that was every lunch period. And for some kids, their parents brought them fast food lunch every single day. Now, of course, I was the mean mom, and on your birthday, I will bring you, you know, Chick-fil-A or P. Terry's or whatever. But the nurse and I think some of the PE teachers kind of were talking about, like, this is not good for kids. Like, fast food every day, French fries, So we kind of started talking about the idea of, do these kiddos have any concept about health and wellness and nutrition? And we dreamed up this amazing thing called FitFest. And folks came in from the community, and we had nutrition sessions. We had sessions where kids would participate, like in yoga or aerobics or skincare. And then they had an opportunity also to like learn how to make healthy snacks. And the kids would pick 3 of those activities, and there were 3 different categories. So they had to pick one in each one. And it was amazing. I mean, these folks that would come in from the community, from all walks of life, all different kinds of representation from wellness, and the kids loved it. They absolutely loved that day. I wished that we could do it more than once a year, but it was such a huge undertaking that we really didn't have the manpower to pull something like that off. But it was really amazing. And it kind of died with COVID and never came back, which unfortunately several things did. But it was an amazing day. And as a principal, you always get really nervous about when your whole school is doing something out of the ordinary. because that's potential for, disaster. But it didn't ever happen. That the staff, the kids, it always worked out. And even if you had bumps, it was workable and turned out to be an amazing thing. Then my last fabulous memory that I'm going to share, because of course there were so many. We started with our 8th grade students something called a Day of Caring. And they learned about empathy and their role, their civic responsibility. We tied it into government, or US history, their role, like their civic role. And we talked about the value of giving back to the community and what it means to volunteer and how it makes not only the community better, but it can make you feel better. So they had a unit where they learned about, volunteering and such. And some of the kids had experience with that through NCL or Young Men's Service League or through their churches or what have you. But in this instance, they would select, I think, 3 different organizations they were interested in. And we taught them about different organizations in Austin area. And our booster club was so helpful in lining some of this up. We had like Any Baby Can, and they worked over at Zilker Park, some of them. Some went to Ronald McDonald House, just all over town, literally. And they would pick their top 3 and they would get one of the top 3. And then they were bussed, if you can imagine. Bussed in some instances. Well, in all the instances, they were all bussed. I don't even know how we didn't have many bus drivers. I did have teachers with that license, but they were bussed out for the day and they went and performed service at this particular organization of their choice. And when they came back, they were so animated and loved it so much and asked, could we please do that more? Could we do that more? And it was really wonderful to see just how excited they were to be able to be a part of something that they felt was meaningful. And so anyway, those are just a few of my like really favorite cherished memories. There, like I said, there were so many, and I loved my 18 years there, which people think is crazy because most people are like, oh, middle school. No, I love those middle school babies. Even when the parents don't.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'm gonna let you pass that to Dale. And I'm gonna show my 2 favorite things about this presentation real quick. Obviously, Mr. Baker here cutting a rug in his memoirs. That's my favorite picture. And then I'm gonna point this quote out real quick. My time at Eanes ISD was a very short 47 years. I would do it again in a heartbeat. That's my favorite thing of the presentation. That after 47 years of teaching my kids and your kids, Mr. Baker would do it again in a heartbeat. That's why we have a great school district. And that's why we have great kids. So let's give a round of applause to all of our staff. For all their hard work. If you don't want to point anything out on the, you want to go through your highlights or ready to go to the mural?
It doesn't, you can just leave that up there for a second. Okay, this is the visual part of the presentation. Let me just say a little bit about my path to get to Hill Country. I was sitting in an education room with Frank Kulashevitz, who was an instructor at UT. His wife was the original art teacher here at Westlake High School. And all of a sudden, she went on leave of absence, and they hired this guy to take her place. He quit at the first semester. He said, I can't take this. This is just crazy. And so everybody in the classroom was going to go and put their application in at Westlake. I didn't even know what Westlake was. I never heard of it. Never heard of Hill Country. So I did drive down Bee Caves from that class. And my first impression was, this is a long ways out here. And there's nothing out here. In 1975, there was nothing out here. And I kept driving and I said, and then I looked and I said, oh, Griffin's Western Wear. At least I can buy some boots, you know? So anyway, I was hired in December of 75 by Norman Fleeman at the high school. And I spent that first year there. And that was a challenge at the high school. We were on a quarter system. So I had about 7 different classes that I was teaching in one class. And then Carol came back and I had to go someplace. And so Dr. Rogers offered me the job at Hill Country. And thankfully, the lady that was teaching art at Hill Country, her husband was the one that was the director of Texas Chainsaw Massacres. And so they moved to Hollywood and I got the job. So
Billy Hooper.
That was it Paula or Pam Hinkle?
Pam, I think.
It was Pam Hinkle, and she drove this really ugly lime green faded out van to Westlake every day. And that was the van that they used in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, so all my career at Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Anyway, so I did move to Hill Country the following year and I stayed there for 9 years. And during that time, we did a lot of different projects. We had a couple of big murals that we did. One was different, but the main mural, if you want to put it on here.
Oh,
Oh, that's Billy.
here, why don't we hand it to Billy? So
Here.
I've got them kind of together.
That's okay.
as a tag team presenter
It's
here.
Is
Is it on? Is it on?
Yeah.
That's me competing against Lost Creek, I'm sure.
Little backstory, but I ran the swim team out at Lost Creek Country Club, swam for him, and then there was the head coach. And we were the gentle karate kid upstarts, and Billy was the big meanie swimmer for Rollingwood, which was the establishment in Obukai, if you will. And Billy was, as you can see there, really the best swimmer in the entire league. So I had to give him a nod there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here, just give your kind of real quick.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Dale mentioned the
Is that
mural.
on? Is that on?
Is it on? Is it on? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, just hold it real close.
Yeah.
So Dale mentioned working on the mural and I worked on the mural with Dale at Hill Country Middle School. And I believe that was in 82, if my time is right on that. I think the mural took a couple of years to do and I worked on it in 82 before I went to high school. So I came out here, I've been out here forever. I came out in 72 and went all the way through Eanes Elementary and Cedar Creek and then Hill Country Middle School where I started working with Dale on the mural. And you can see it here. I actually did, I'm embarrassed to point it out because it's not very good, but it's the blue car, the blue Mercedes with the two people standing next to it. And then I also did the soccer player over there.
So this is, the mural was, I believe, 16 by 8 feet tall. So it was very difficult to try to photograph. Trace sent me the digital copy, but it's hard to blow up. But the detail is fantastic. And Billy's work was notable.
Yeah, so it was a big deal at the time. It was a big deal at the time. I'll just share a really quick personal story and then give it back to Dale. I used to, and we had a great situation where I could get out of class and go and work on the mural. Yeah, at least that's what I told them. But I would get out of my math class and my history, and I would come in and work on the mural, and I'd come in at lunch, and it was exciting to me, and I remember it. It was the first time that I really felt like I was connected to stuff because I wasn't a great student and I wasn't really into any of my classes and I wasn't connected to a lot of activities. And the mural was a great time for me when I felt really connected and wanted to come into school. I was anxious to be there, anxious to be a part of it. So it was really just a great experience. And then real quickly, the other experience I had, and I think Barb will remember this, years and years later, I think our daughter had a basketball game. This is maybe 25 years later or something like that, at Hill Country Middle School. And I hadn't been back, and I honestly didn't even remember that the mural was up. And then I came and I was walking through the cafeteria and I saw the mural, and it was just like, wow, it just took me back. And I just saw all not just the stuff that I did, but also the stuff that I remembered my friends did. I remembered particular people painting particular things. And it just really gave me the sense of the history of it and brought me back the incredible nostalgia of seeing the mural. So anyway, it was pretty powerful to me, and that mural really represented a pretty big, important part of my time at Hill Country. So.
Let me just go back a second to Hill Country, because Ellen had said something about that Hill Country was like the friendliest place. It really was. I mean, it was amazing. And the staff was so incredible. I mean, I don't remember, even in the high school, everybody at the high school, when I went up there, they would stay in their own departments, you know, and would never mingle. But everybody would go to the lounge or go to the library or whatever. But everybody was together on it. It was just a great time. It's the best 9 years. I even had a really hard time deciding if I wanted to stay at middle school or go to the high school. John Matisak, when he went up to the high school, he wanted me to come up there, and I told him no the first time, and then he kept, you know how John is, and he said, well, I'll make you the head of the art department at high school. And I said, well, okay, I'll do it. And so, but it was a really hard decision to go to the high school because I really loved my time at the middle school. The mural that we're looking at up here is part of the artist in residency program that the Eanes Independent School District had at the time. They brought in guest artists to work with the kids, and this was it was an artist called Dan Trevino. I mean, he lived in Dripping Springs, and he came in, and we sat down and we decided what we wanted to do. We decided to do this mural. It was a pretty major undertaking at the time because we brought in all this plywood. In my room, which was the science room that I think you referred to, was our room originally, and it has a huge room. I mean, so the mural filled up the whole back of the wall of that room, and it was on Good Morning America. That when we finished it, that Good Morning America came in and did a live broadcast from that room. So it was kind of cool, and all the kids. The objective of that was just so that the kids could paint something that they really wanted to, that they were interested in. They could paint a landscape, or they could paint some type of landmark that was in the community, or they could paint their pets. They could paint whatever they wanted to. And so the students really had a good time painting on this. We painted on, we did other things, but eventually kids would come in and just paint, like Billy was saying, they'd come in during their lunch period, or they'd come in during the class periods, and they would paint on it. So
That was my understanding of the rule.
yeah.
Dale, I think that student involvement and the kids really being given the freedom, the creativity to document how they perceive the area and the school was so important. That's one of the things that really made it, is it hung for 40 years, really made it a very, very meaningful thing. When Lisa and I were looking at how do we tell the story of Eanes or of Hill Country for 50 years, you know, really that mural for 40 years, for 80% of it is kind of the thread. And we thought, well, that's kind of let's build our narrative, that arc around that 40-year mural, because it really represented a time and place that's not this time and place now, but it really represented how those students saw their world. And I still think it's just a great piece of art.
Can you go back one slide to the full thing? Okay, this is not the whole slide. I mean,
Oh, you want the whole thing? Yeah.
This is fine. It doesn't matter.
Which one do you want?
This is good right here. If you'll notice, there's one of the controversial things, I guess, in part of this mural was the money in the trees. Okay.
Can you show on the?
Oh. Right here.
Oh, okay.
We talked about that, and it really wasn't meant to say that people at Westlake have all the money. Well, they do, but now, but back then they didn't. It was really about opportunity, you know, that people were moving to Westlake. People, the whole community was growing like crazy. We didn't have the mall, Barton Creek Square Mall. It was being built. And so there was a lot of things in there that would be saying that, you know, you can make some money in Westlake if you go out there and do it. I think everybody.
Cedar choppers too.
Cedar chopper, yeah. I think everybody in Westlake knew that you could make money out here except for me, because I could have, when we moved here in 72, we could have bought a lot at Lakeway overlooking golf course for $6,000. So
Yeah.
that was not a smart move on my part, but as you look at this mural though, you can see some stuff that kids thought about. There's a Taco Bell sign
Yeah.
right there. Does anybody remember when they built that? It was very controversial.
I certainly remember, because it opened basically spring break of my senior year, and, my cohorts known as the Cremolas, we decided it was too much growth, so we snuck down the night before the Taco Bell opened, and we stole the Taco Bell, that hung up there, and then a couple of weeks later, in a Jason Bourne type maneuver, we hung it in the middle of the common area during activity period, and because of disguises and, siblings' cars, everybody knew that we did it, and the school could not prove it because we were back in class when the activity period was over. I will never forget when Taco Bell opened without their bell, so.
Well, if you remember, Westlake had an ordinance against neon signs. And they didn't like it at all. So some people had to take down their neon signs, but that was just one of the things they had. But kids got to choose what they wanted to paint. Billy decided he'd paint himself as a soccer player. I guess he's a soccer player. And but there was a lot of kids that worked on this mural, and they got to come in and paint what they wanted. We kind of filled in the rest of it. One of the neat things was they got to sit down and work with an artist in residence, and myself and other art teacher, Anita Inkery, was the other art teacher. She came in, worked on it a little bit.
Was it outlined and so the students could come in and fill it in?
No.
It was freestyle?
Freestyle the whole thing. We just kind of filled in around what they painted, and so. But you can see that they had a lot of lake activities they like to work on. But I didn't even know that there was actual bee caves.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where he got his name, was from the bee cave. So, but anyway, that's what we worked on. Does anybody have any questions? Do you see anything in there you'd ask a question about?
I think it's fascinating how there are student activities there that we don't have anymore. It's either gymnastics or ice skating or something. One of the girls, they on the left corner, that one, is she
Oh, right there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess she took skating or something. I don't know where she took it, but
small?
Yeah.
And
But
I circled Robert and Eliza Eames and the original log cabin, and then also a cedar chopper, because that you'll see the next slide, that was put on the new mural, which was glad to see that continuity.
Dale, did y'all decide to include that bit of ancient school district history, or did the students come up with?
no, we decided that.
And Dale, who's in the clouds above the Eames?
Well, it's just the people who came before, and like you were saying, there was some Indians in this areas, and in the buffalo, there was buffalo that roamed. We did a little bit of research on it, not a lot, but they had Indians in this area, and then there was, people who came before. It's just kind of symbolized that there were people here before us, and there'll be people here after us too, so. But there was a lot of construction going on with the mall. You can see that on the right side of the road, of the mural.
Is all that the mall, or was that any of the schools being built?
It was some of the schools being built and the mall, so I believe. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I assume it's Valley View or.
Yeah.
Trail.
There's a lot of construction going on throughout the whole area, and it was just always under construction, so.
Billy, you want to add anything before we turn it over to Trace?
Nope, I think, any questions?
Where is this mural now?
Don't know.
I can answer that. I moved possession of the mural. It was 4 different panels. I mean, complete sheets of heavy duty plywood, 4 by 8 feet. So it's 32 feet long. So each panel is now wrapped in protective padded blankets, and we have them over at the History Center. History Center's not big enough to even display one panel yet. But we hope at some point we'll have an expanded space and we'll be able to show that image.
And,
Why was it?
well, so this is the new mural, that was put up. I mean, times change,
Sorry.
attitudes change. And so this is the new mural that's up. And again, I circled Robert and Eliza Eames and the Cedar Choppers that was, included in that. This has been up for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And, when we get to Trace, I'm gonna show a slide of, they've got a really good banner up of the timeline for Hill Country for the 50th. And on the bottom is the entire, new mural. So the old mural. So the old mural is currently hanging in a form in Hill Country. We still have it, and who knows, maybe someday they'll hang side by side. We don't. What's that?
Who did this mural?
This is a similar story. It was done by our students, did most of the color for sure. An outside artist who was hired to help review the previous one, the history, and then get student input. And so it's real reflective of a lot of things going on campus. And so so it's kind of a similar story, not quite the detail freestyle and all that kind of thing, but certainly it was put together. And I was not a part of that necessarily, but I was on campus when this all came about, so I know a little bit more. But it's certainly similar spirit in the making of this and trying to respect.
Let's go to, here's Trace back in the day. And I love that we have the basketball picture because Trace became head basketball coach at Westlake High School. So a little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, I think this is my 7th grade. I know the basketball pictures from 7th grade. So, so yeah, Hill Country is been a part of my life in one way or another for quite a bit. A little just kind of brief outline. I guess Hill Country is where I met the really 4 most influential people to me. One, you already talked about, Mr. McGill, his wife, Miss McGill, were huge to me. They were the ones that just believed in me like you wouldn't believe and encouraged me to go into this. In fact, as Cara McGill started teen teaching at Westlake High School, when I was a junior, I was in that very first group. And then my senior year, similar story. I don't think you can get away with it anymore. But my senior year, Miss McGill came to me and said, we need someone who was good last year and who knows it. Because there was only about 12 of us total on the whole school. And you'd be really good to help train the new ones. And I was like, well, I have to get this history, or I think it was actually government credit. And I didn't have the elective space in my schedule. And she said, let me see what I can do. And then all of a sudden I'm the first team 2, if you will. So it was really awesome. So they believed in me, but also at Hill Country, I met Coach Calvert and I met Coach Brashear. And those 2 guys were just such a massive influence in my life as just being great people. I think that was the biggest thing for me. And so I still stay in touch with both of them. There's quite a few teachers who I still stay in touch with here and there. Actually, Coach Calvert and I still go watch basketball games. But at one point, just kind of a brief history. I shared this the other night. I spoke at the Cedar Creek EEF event, and I don't like to talk a whole lot about me, if you will. I'm more about doing things in the kids. But I was at Cedar Creek when it opened, 4th grade. And so that was a little connection. But at one point, when I was fortunate enough and Mr. Baker Dale was on the original interview committee when I was originally hired at Westlake in 2008 as the head basketball coach. When I came back at one point, all of a sudden I was moving over into teen teaching as well. And I had both Miss McGill's job and Coach Calvert's job at the same time. And so that was really surreal, but to me, real cool, just because, those 4 people have really guided my, particularly my early education career with wanting to go into it and pursuing it. I knew I wanted to coach right away, and they were just such great role models. So a little bit more, I was lucky to come to Westlake as a teacher, but I did go first grade through graduating in 87 from Westlake, and it was some awesome times. It really was. It was a time of massive growth. My senior year was the first year that we went 5A, class 5A. And so at the time, that was the largest time. I know Coach Calvert still stresses over that because our basketball team was really good coming through. And then all of a sudden, our senior year, we went into a district that had just consolidated 3 Waco schools. And so theoretically, they had 21 returning starters. And so it was a whole new world for us. But it was a great time, and it's been awesome hearing some of the other shared stories. And so I can give you a few little updates on the school. I'm back now as assistant principal. I've been an administrator for, I guess, 8 years now after 26 years of teaching and coaching. Excuse me. And figured that maybe I'll do something a little bit different to kind of end it up. And so that's why I pursued, again, through some great mentorship, the administrative side of it. And so I do have 2 daughters that have gone through the school, and I also say the best teacher in Eanes is my wife. She's been in the same classroom at Forest Trail Elementary for 23 years and is just incredible. So I'm lucky. So let's see here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
Anything
with-
else?
Yeah, why don't you kind of, if you can't, the highlights of the,
Sure.
this is the mural that has the timeline, and you see the original mural on the bottom there.
So this has the highlights. It was really awesome that our booster club put this together, recognizing the 50th anniversary this year. And so we have a lot of things going on. The next slide, I think I'll show you we'll talk about some of the stuff, but we have a lot of stuff going on for the golden anniversary throughout the year. And so this just kind of gives that timeline. I guess a couple of things is kind of hard to see, but
Dale, can you hand him the clicker there?
I wasn't sure about going through this, but you can see the Westlake, Hill Country now has grown. I'm not sure exactly on the quest. It's kind of hard to see. But as things have continued, I can say a lot of the traditions continue in one form or fashion. But you can see 1991, this is the national recognition as a blue ribbon. 87 was my senior year, but that's also when the second middle school opened. And so that's also when, I believe, if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, Forest Trail opened that same year. And so 84, okay. Well, I still give my wife a hard time. I taught there before she did as a teen teacher. So that's one of my ongoing jokes. But do we want to go ahead and go to the other slide and I can just review? But if, it is pretty cool. We have this nice timeline to help the students recognize just some of the significant events along the way.
What is it's kind of culminating in May. What is the soiree on May 13th?
That's still kind of coming together, but it's going to be more like from what we're trying to put together, more like a dance, a little more formal kind of thing, but it's going to be more community involved as well.
And I think toward May, we'll, as a group, kind of recircle back and possibly hit some other parts of the Hill Country 50.
And it's really our boosters that are heading that up and have some great ideas. Throughout the year, we have another thing that we started up a couple of years ago that falls in line with some of the previous things that, like Ms. Sullivan said, we want to get the students involved in stuff and have some fun. And we have what's called the 8th graders still do that carnival. So that's shifted a little bit. Pedernales shifted a little bit to, it's now called Pace Spin, and Ms. Sullivan's real familiar. We were working together actually kind of through those COVID times and we were right before it hit. And some things were shifting in the community, but keeping that alive. So that's still a tradition, but that's when the 8th graders leave. But then on the last day of school, they have a carnival. So our 6th and 7th graders will do some other form of field trip throughout the year. But we started something last year to be more encompassing of the whole, 2 years ago, of the whole campus, and we call it the Cougar Cup. And so each student every student is a part of the red team, the white team, or the blue team. And so they are designated that, and then they're that team throughout the entire year. And we put, like Halloween, we have a big dress up competition going. And if they dress up in 75s or the 70s, then they get bonus points for their Cougar Cup. But it all culminates at the end of the year where we total up all those points. The teachers are all on teams. And so they lead kids in the different activities and stuff. And so it culminates with the big, kind of like if you remember Sports Day, it kind of culminates with, part of it is like a sports day, but we also have other more kind of silly games. And then we have different competitions where there's a geography bee and puzzles and art stuff. So we're really trying to bring in cool activities for all students to participate, because not everybody wants to go run or throw. And so we culminate with that, and then a big pep rally to celebrate it at the end, and we give out the Cougar Cup trophy. But throughout the year, we've identified several football games, all different performances from our fine arts groups as being the golden activity, if you will. And so if students go, we make a little QR code now, and students and teachers, if they go, then they can fill out, zap the QR code, and they get credit for going, and that adds up to their point totals. And so it's a way for them to encourage, not only go, but they can, they get a little bonus from it too. But so we've identified a bunch of different events, and that's what this list is, and we're working through it, and it's really been a lot of fun. We're seeing more teachers. There's always that core group of teachers that go, and it's great. But this has given encouragement to a few more teachers to go. And so we're seeing that it's given encouragement of our students to go as well. So, but those are a lot of the things that are ongoing throughout the year. And so Mr. L is really good about sending out the info in the newsletters. And so if you follow that, they're all posted on the webpage too. To find out some more of that information. But we have, the choir concerts and all that kind of stuff are there. So a couple of other things I know I put together, we're still at a little over 900 students. If some of the nuts and bolts, if you will, of the campus, we are very full. There have been multiple additions from my time there. I remember going downhill into the library and the open walls and all that kind of stuff. And I did learn a little bit more talking with Rex, because they had put up those partition walls, and I think they were already on, by the time I was there. I knew it. It was rare that they were ever opened up in my day. But I did spend some time in some of those little cubbies that evidently you get written up or whatever. I would go in Mr. Wink's English class, me and a buddy would go hang out in there the whole time. And I don't know how much English we got done, but the campus is with the additions, we're still very full, but it's thriving and in such a good way. And so, I feel like I kind of represent a little before Miss Sullivan and following up. So, I can kind of give that before experience, and obviously incredible years in between, but it's been really kind of cool coming back and working with the students there and providing maybe a little bit of a historical perspective on things too. But it really is a small world, because we have students. I communicate all the time. In fact, Mr. Matisak's daughter, Dana, texted me today. So, it's like there's these small world events, and it never ends where I'm running into someone or reconnecting with someone that, I had totally forgot. Billy reminded us, we did a triathlon together, me and Rob Hill, right? And we each took a leg of the triathlon. So that was what was so fun, and coming back, and there's still those kind of opportunities, and trying to bring in that same spirit that Ms. Sullivan talked about, or continue that same